Greetings, friends. Today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of December 16, 2024. A vast number of events have occurred today. Before we begin, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support the channel's growth. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Now let's move on to the Kursk direction, from where very intriguing news is emerging. The most significant topic, of course, is whether or not North Korean units are present in this region. According to footage published by the Ukrainian side, which they claim is from objective monitoring systems, the answer is yes. North Korean units are present. In the footage released by the 93rd Brigade, we can observe a large number of targets. According to the author of this video, these are North Korean assault troops moving toward forested areas in the Sudzha district to initiate assault operations. We can also observe some attempts by the Ukrainian armed forces to carry out artillery strikes. However, the potential North Korean units are advancing in a wide formation, making artillery and FPV drones generally ineffective. In daytime footage, we can see a similar situation. These visuals were precisely geolocated. Note the small appendage-like feature, the forest strip on the map. From this strip, a large group of assault troops is moving. Again, the video's author claims these are North Korean units advancing toward the forested area between Nova Ivanivka, Nova Sorochina, and Orlovka. Based on this footage, we can conclude that the main goal of these assault troops, whether North Korean or Russian, is to enter the forested area and push Ukrainian forces toward the village of Kruglenka. It is possible that, even as we speak, intense battles are taking place in this area. In the near future, we may receive the first objective control footage, which will help answer whether North Korean or Russian assault units have managed to break through Ukrainian defenses and take this strategic position. We also cannot rule out the possibility that the North Koreans' narrative is part of Ukrainian propaganda aimed at portraying these forces as immortal, while highlighting that they also suffer significant losses. Nevertheless, based on the published images, the season seems consistent with what we see. However, it is impossible to confirm with absolute certainty that this footage was taken in this specific location and not, for example, in the vicinity of Bakhmut in 2023. Moving on, according to data from various pro-Russian mapping services, the northern group of forces is steadily clearing a path from the settlement of Nova Ivanivka toward Viktorivka. According to map adjustments, an entire forested area has reportedly come under Russian control, as well as a small road intersection. The primary objective for Russian forces appears to be advancing toward the settlements of Viktorivka and Mali Lokhny. These two settlements currently serve as supply routes for Ukrainian forces in this pocket, including the forested area where battles are ongoing between North Korean and Ukrainian units. The goal here is to close the encirclement and trap a significant number of Ukrainian soldiers. Additionally, reports indicate that Russian armed forces have begun assault operations toward the settlement of Ruska Porechna. No specific details about which units are involved, whether North Korean or Russian, have been released. However, pro-Russian sources claim that the 1427th Regiment is carrying out the attack on Ruska Porechna. Current footage and map corrections suggest that Russian forces have reached the outskirts of Ruska Porechna. In general, the offensive in this area is understandable, as another supply line runs through Ruska Porechna, originating from Mala Lokhny. Currently, we are referring to this specific road. If Russian forces manage to cut off this route near Ruska Porechna, it could significantly weaken the supply chain of the Ukrainian grouping located between Orlovka, Nova Sorochina, and Stara Sorochina. As for Darine and Sverdlikovo, combat activity there has temporarily stalled. At present, both sides are regrouping. The Russian forces have managed to secure a strong foothold in Darine, and all Ukrainian counterattack attempts have failed to yield any success. It is possible that, in the near future, Russian units will begin advancing in this direction as well. In the coming days, we will likely see new footage showcasing the potential operations of North Korean units in the Kursk region. Given that the current offensive is being conducted on a broad front, adjustments to the front line can be expected soon. However, based on prior Russian counter-offensives in the Kursk salient, the first 2 to 3 days are typically the most challenging, potentially involving significant losses. Results in terms of noticeable changes to the front line usually manifest in the following 4 to 5 days. Moving on to the Kupiansk direction, a significant amount of important news is emerging. To start, both neutral and pro-Ukrainian mapping services unanimously report that the Russian army continues to expand its bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the Oskil River. Russian forces have reportedly approached the settlement of Zakidne, located north of Kupiansk, as well as made progress south of Dvorichna. Pro-Russian military experts were the first to report advancements in Dvorichna several days ago. However, the Ukrainian side has now begun expressing substantial concern over the lack of adequate forces and response measures to stabilize the situation in this sector of the front. Next, we turn to the areas of Kolesnikivka and Krugliakivka, where the situation becomes more complex. Reliable pro-Russian sources report that the 1st Tank Army has significantly expanded its foothold in the past 24 hours, repelled several Ukrainian attacks, and inflicted heavy losses on Ukrainian forces. 4 counterattacks were reportedly repelled, and Russian forces have gradually extended their control along a small area near the Oskil River. However, pro-Ukrainian mapping services present a starkly different narrative. According to Ukrainian sources, Russian forces have been completely pushed out of the Kolesnikivsky forest and have retreated north of Krugliakivka. This conflicting information makes it challenging to assess the true situation on the ground. For this reason, the map will not be updated yet, as these contradictory reports suggest intense fighting in the area over the past 24 hours. Additionally, reports from various sources, neutral, pro-Ukrainian, and pro-Russian, indicate that Russian forces have broken through Ukrainian defenses in the village of Lozova. The settlement is reportedly partially under Russian control, and it is expected that the clearing of the area will be completed in the coming days. Once this is achieved, Russian forces could gain operational freedom and begin moving toward encircling the settlement of Bohuslavka. This sector is commonly referred to as the Bohuslavka direction. Next, we move to the Siversk sector, where the situation remains ambiguous. We've discussed this area multiple times, considering the changes in command, misinformation that was exposed, and other factors. Today is no exception. There is an almost mystical quality to the events unfolding here. Let me remind you that just a few days ago, we repeatedly discussed the significant successes of the 25th Army in the forests of Kreminna and the Serebryanske forestry. Russian units had been making gradual progress toward the Siversky Donets River. Although no objective footage had surfaced, this information was regularly featured in reports from specific units and bloggers. Based on this, it seemed likely that Russian command had shifted its tactics on this front, opting not to storm settlements like Verkhnyokamyanska, Vodiane, Vyemka, or Bilohorivka. Instead, they appeared to be heading directly toward the Donets River, possibly planning to cross it later. This seemed consistent with the expectations tied to the command change in this sector. However, since this morning, new and conflicting information has emerged. Reliable pro-Russian sources reported that Russian forces, advancing from Zolotarivka, broke through Ukrainian defenses, penetrated 2 kilometers, and managed to establish a foothold, with the overall defense line compromised. The tone of these reports conveyed a significant and deep advance by Russian forces. Within minutes, perhaps half an hour, Ukrainian sources published their own version. They reported that by December 14th, the Russian army had launched a large-scale offensive in the Siversk sector, involving up to 400 assault troops, essentially a battalion, 30 vehicles, including buggies and motorcycles, advancing on a broad front. Ukrainian sources confirmed that Russian units had penetrated 2 to 3 kilometers, and Zolotarivka was mentioned as a focal point of the fighting. This led to speculation that the combat likely occurred near Bilahora, the highest point in the area. However, Ukrainian sources painted an entirely different picture of the outcome. According to their reports, the Russian offensive was completely repelled, resulting in unprecedented losses for the Russian forces. Once again, we see 2 entirely different realities. Ukrainian sources report one thing, while Russian sources describe another. Next, we turn to the Chasiv Yar sector. As of yesterday, neutral mapping services indicated that Ukrainian forces had regained control of part of the refractory plant, with the area marked as contested. Today, however, objective control footage was published. Russian sources released videos of FPV drone strikes on Ukrainian positions at the plant. Based on this footage, the map was updated in favor of Ukrainian forces, as it seems either Russian troops never fully occupied that part of the plant, or Ukrainian counterattacks successfully regained control of the area. We then move toward Toretsk, where significant developments have also been reported. In this area, there is little ambiguity. The Russian army continues its gradual advance, pressing against Ukrainian defenses. Today, additional objective footage from the flanks of the Centralnaya mine was released. The footage shows numerous strikes by Ukrainian drones on Russian forward positions, with several geolocated incidents confirming the location. Based on this evidence, the map has been updated to reflect changes on the western flank. However, on the central front, particularly near the mine itself, the area remains marked as contested, as no conclusive flags or videos have confirmed full Russian control. Despite this, some mappers and bloggers have preemptively shaded the northern part of the mine under Russian control due to geolocation data. Gradually, Russian forces are advancing toward the Toretsk mine. Footage from the past 24 hours shows strikes on Ukrainian positions with FAB bombs, indicating that Russian forces are moving closer to this defensive hub and preparing for final clearance operations. The battle for Toretsk appears to be nearing its conclusion. Interestingly, this is one of the few directions where Ukrainian forces are not making significant counterattack attempts to reclaim lost ground. Ukrainian counterattacks are present, but they seem to be focused more on neutralizing potential future strategic positions for the Russian army, rather than regaining immediate control. In the footage, Ukrainian forces are seen approaching a building, planting explosives in the basement, and detonating it before leaving the area. Previously, only one section of the building had been destroyed, but this time the entire structure was demolished. Moving to the Pokrovsk direction, conflicting reports have emerged. Some sources claim Russian forces have reached the outskirts of Peshchenoi, while others report successful Ukrainian counterattacks securing positions in Shevchenko. Footage shows a Russian drone striking Ukrainian vehicles entering Shevchenko from the southwest. Although equipment was destroyed, Ukrainian troops likely managed to establish a defensive position. Ukrainian sources confirm these counterattacks have pushed Russian forces back into the settlement. On this front, the appointment of General Alexander Tarnavsky, known as the Butcher, as the new commander has intensified Ukrainian counteroffensives, including towards Toretsk. However, these attacks were less effective, with Russian drones targeting and destroying advancing Ukrainian equipment. Additionally, an intriguing report highlights the fate of Ukraine's 155th Brigade, which had been trained and equipped to NATO standards in France. Upon its return to Ukraine, the brigade was dismantled, with its troops and equipment reassigned to other units. Reassembled with newly mobilized soldiers, the brigade was quickly routed during Russian advances near Shevchenko. Ukrainian forces are now attempting counterattacks to regain lost ground. Near Kurakhove, Russian forces have advanced along the reservoir, with confirmation from both pro-Russian and neutral sources. In Uspanivka, footage from the village of Anivka shows Russian flags being raised on the central square, signaling the complete withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from the settlement.